Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Andrea Pearson Show. And today's episode is actually, my name is Andrea. Sorry, I'm the host of this show. Today's episode is going to be about micromanaging and being a great leader and what role micromanaging plays in that, if any. And before I start recording, or before I jump into the material, my goodness, my stuttering. Before I jump into the material, I just wanted to give a little bit of a FYI heads up that we do have somebody here working in our yard. And this is the reason the episode did not come out yesterday. I usually have them come out on Mondays, but and I record day of and then release day of, which maybe I should be recording in advance or something. But yeah, they came and started working yesterday, and he told us yesterday that they would need to take a break until Friday. And so I was like, I'll just record tomorrow. But today he came anyway. Yay. Which is really great because we want to have the work done, right? We want to be able to move on with our lives and have it all done and finished and everything. But I just realized that my mic was covered, so I'm sorry if that was too quiet. I just moved a little bit closer to myself. Anyway, so yeah, so the topic today is on micromanaging and how to be a great leader, and what role does micromanaging play in your role as a leader, and when you are working with employees versus when you are working alone in your own company without any employees. So what exactly is micromanaging? It's basically when somebody's like you feel like they're over your shoulder, like breathing, just like, and they're like waiting for you to make a mistake, or they're correcting you constantly at every turn. It's just really irritating. Nobody likes a micromanager. People say that all the time. Oh, my boss is a micromanager, right? So micromanaging does have a bad reputation. So that's what micromanaging is being overly involved. So how do people respond to micromanaging? Generally, fairly negatively, right? Like people don't like being micromanaged. They don't like being told what to do all the time. They don't like when their boss is heavily involved in what they're doing, because first off, it causes a lot of stress and anxiety, but it also can lead to more mistakes, because if they feel like they're constantly being watched, then they're not ever able going to be able to relax. They won't be able to be creative. They won't be able to be the best employee possible because they're constantly waiting for somebody to stop them and tell them they're doing something wrong. And so pros and cons of micromanaging. We'll get into the pros a little bit later, but cons are the stress and anxiety I mentioned. It does impact creativity, it impacts productivity, it impacts people's desire to stay at that company negatively, and it makes people dislike their bosses excessively. Oh my goodness, almost every single time I've heard about somebody saying they don't like their boss, it's because the boss is they're overly involved. They micromanage. They tell people what to do, and they're just bossy, right? But there are certain times when being a micromanager is very important, and I'll get the no-duh ones out of the way right off the bat. So high stakes projects, basically when your stakeholders or the end result is very, very important, and you have very tight budget, very tight deadlines. It's at that point, it is sometimes necessary for a boss to become a micromanager. And by that, I mean to be overly involved or heavily involved. And then also, if you're working in a highly regulated industry, so like if something is FDA or CDC, like my husband used to work in a lab that was owned by the government, and they had to follow a ton of CDC guidelines and regulations. And so very, very heavily regulated, a very, very heavily micromanaged situation. And I'm going to tell you guys right now that these kinds of jobs, people tend to have higher stress and higher anxiety in them because they don't have that creativity, that freedom to be themselves and to do and say, and actually to take ownership of their job. And that's kind of understandable in the situation. Like, you can't take full ownership of a job that is highly regulated, where your creativity is stifled because of all the things that you aren't allowed to do, or the steps that you have to take. My husband's really great at looking at a system and at a process and going, okay, so this step is unneeded and we should eliminate it. And when he worked for the lab, they gave him permission to go in and look at things and find ways to remove unnecessary steps. And his previous boss, the one that he had before he quit, the one he had two bosses before he quit, was really great about that. And she actually went to bat for him, and they were able to get a lot of his suggestions implemented, saving their lab thousands, like 20, 50, 100, $200,000 on projects and on systems, because he's really great at looking at something and going, hey, this is unnecessary. But generally speaking, employees do not have that sort of creativity. They don't have that sort of freedom. And his next boss was not okay with him doing that sort of thing because she was like, this lies outside of the realm of your position. And we've already got a process in place. I don't see any need to fix it. And he's like, but the process is not efficient. It's not a good process if it's taking us this long when it could only take this long and we'd save so much money. But anyway, so his next top boss did not allow that creativity, that ability to explore the limits and the edge of his position. And so it became a position that he absolutely hated. And that boss was also very micromanaging. Okay, so when is micromanaging actually good? When is it actually important? When should you be doing it? When you have a new hire. So if you are working in a company, like as in you are the boss or you own the company or whatever, and you're taking on new employees and your job is to train, it's very important for you to show those new hires exactly what the company culture is. It's important for you to show them what their roles are. So their role, what your role is, what their role is when it comes to other employees, other like contractors, vendors, everything. So in the beginning, you want to be overly involved until you know for sure they understand the vision, the goals, where you're going with the companies, till you know for sure that they understand what it is that they're doing, but also what it is that they're supposed to be doing and not supposed to be doing. And so in the beginning, like the worst thing you can do is to hire somebody and then expect them to understand exactly what they're supposed to do with only like a knowledge base to go off of, because you can't, I mean, if that's your company culture, I mean, maybe that's what your company culture is, but you're not going to be very successful. So in the beginning, you need to be around a lot more. You need to make sure that somebody, if not you, steps in and guides them and directs them and helps them figure out what role they have and where they can put their creativity and basically help them to be more comfortable in the position that you've hired them for, and more comfortable so they know where they can expand their position and what they can expand into. And this would go also into like promotion ideas, like places where they understand really quickly, this is a promotion I can get. This is what I can work into. And if there aren't promotional opportunities, if there's anything else that they can do to grow inside within the company. So when you first hire somebody, you need to be a micromanager. And I've taught this at workshops in the past. Oh my gosh, people were so annoyed at me for saying this. I'm like, it's temporary. It's only for the first couple of months while the person is learning the ropes. And then after that, you have to back off. But it is absolutely necessary and very important. Otherwise, you're going to hire people and they can totally sabotage your culture. They can totally sabotage your company because they don't fully understand what their role is or fully understand what's not okay. Like if you do not allow gossip and you never tell them that you don't allow gossip and they start gossiping, that's on you, not on them. For not telling them what your vision, what the thing that you're striving for in your company is. And so the whole point of this is you need to teach them correct principles and let them govern themselves. So they need to be able to understand what the principles are of their position and their role and their everything before that you can step back and allow them to have more freedom. And I've heard it referred to like when you're raising a child, you give them a rope that's like, half an inch long, or if you're millimeters, I don't remember. Like it's like a centimeter, right? And then as they prove themselves capable, you give them more and more leeway until they get to the point where you can actually cut the rope entirely and give them all the freedom that they want. Okay, so how does this apply to one-man bands, people who don't have employees and they are the only person inside their company? So it applies in when you're hiring an assistant. Like a lot of people I've talked to, a lot of companies I've talked to are either about to hire an assistant or they have hired assistants in the past and it did not work out, or they should hire an assistant, but they're not willing to because they've heard bad, they've heard horror stories of people hiring assistants. I'm going to tell you right now, I hired 5 assistants before I found my current one, who's been with me since 2014. And the first 5 assistants were bad hires because number one, well, with at least one of them, I did not. Okay, so I hired people who were good in one area of life that I was working with them in, but they were not good or qualified in the other one. And I was like, well, this person's really intelligent. Maybe I'll be able to teach them. But there are certain skills and innate talents that sometimes don't transfer across. And so when you're hiring an assistant, it's really important for you to be micromanaging in the beginning so you don't waste a lot of money later on down, when you find out later on down the road that you grabbed the wrong person. And there was at least one assistant that I hired where I did not give them clear communication. I did not tell them exactly what I wanted them to do. And it was because I just kind of expected them to know. I was like, oh, you're an assistant, so you should know this stuff automatically, right? That's not the case. And don't ever assume that somebody just understands everything because they're an assistant. Even my assistant, who's been my assistant for 10 years, she is absolutely phenomenal, but she's not comfortable starting a project unless she understands what her goals are and what your role is and what the interaction that you're going to have together will be. And that's one of the reasons I absolutely love her, because like she'd worked with many, many other authors before. And that's why I needed her, was because I was like, hey, you've got experience working in being an author, but she understood the author world, but she didn't understand my author world. And so, like in the beginning, it took us a little while because we were just trying to figure things out. But like now I don't have to be super overly wordy unless, again, it's something that's very, very particular and I have to be really like, I need specific, very particular results. But we work together really, really great. And she's absolutely phenomenal. By the way, if you guys do need a virtual assistant, especially those of you guys who are authors, let me know and I'll refer you to her, and hopefully she's okay with that. Just occurred to me. Adriel, I'm sorry if you're not okay with that. Anyway, okay, so one-man bands, working with assistants. You also need, when you're working with vendors, contractors, accountant, etc., some of these will need to have more micromanaging up front, where you are overly explaining what you need, like an accountant, what you do, what you don't do. When I first started working with my accountant, I was like, yay, great. She's worked with authors, but come to find out there were a couple of things that she wasn't aware of, because the other authors that she worked with weren't as big as I had gotten, which, I want to work with them and help them make their business better and bigger. But so I was able to teach her a few things. And if I had just assumed that she had known from the beginning, then I would have assumed wrong. And they're not really big things. It's just, and I'm not going to get into what they were, but it was totally understandable why she did not know about them. Anyway, same with contractors, vendors, anybody that you work with on a long-term basis, you need to do a little bit micromanaging at the beginning. So also, if you're doing projects for somebody else, if you're like me and you take on clients, one of the most important things you can do is kind of micromanage the project in the beginning and micromanage how frequently you communicate with the client. So if you communicate with them, don't just start off your relationship where you're just communicating with them like once every few weeks. That's a really bad way to manage your business. Until you have established trust and established guidelines, you need to be communicating more than is comfortable. So for example, my client in Australia, he does not like a lot of emails. He's just like, stop emailing me. But in the beginning, he didn't mind it. And I would email him multiple times a day. I would send him weekly updates. I still send him weekly updates. But I still email him multiple times a day if we're working on something specific, but I don't send him frequent updates like I did when we were first working together. I would send him several updates every single day to be like, this is where I'm at. And that was how I established not just my authority as him being one of my clients or whatever, but it was also how I established my work ethic and how I showed him what I was focusing on and showed him how I approach things. And so if you're somebody who takes on clients, then you need to be micromanaging until that client fully understands you and until you have a really strong relationship of trust, where they know that if they don't hear from you for a little bit, that you're still focusing on their stuff, right? I'm checking out my notes, making sure I've got everything. Let's see. Okay. All right, so yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Yeah, I don't know how long I've been recording. I was going to give an update on the situation, but I forgot to check the clock before I started. But things with my client are moving forward. I'm really pleased with how it's going. We are starting to tap into, so he's given me several projects to work on. One of them, I have $100,000 budget for marketing. And then the next one, I've got over $1 million budget for marketing. And we've just started tapping into the $1 million one with ads. And I'm starting to build up his newsletter list for that specific project, that specific book. It's a research-based book. The other one is based on his business. It's not as complex and the audience is a little bit wider. Anyway, so I'm really having a lot of fun with that. I'm doing a lot of like lead gen type ads. I'm doing a lot of traffic conversion type ads. I'm gonna get off topic here. I would like to do a bunch of future episodes that are on Facebook ads completely, because there's just a lot that's out there right now. There's just so much. There's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of good information, and just figuring out what applies and what doesn't apply, what works, what doesn't work. I think that's really important. And so I do plan on doing episodes in the future on Facebook ads, and then I'll get to that once I get to that. But anyway, so hit the like and the subscribe button and comment below if you're on YouTube. Let me know of any questions you have, Angeline. I will get to your questions. Thank you so much for them. I'm loving your comments on my videos. It's been awesome. And anybody else, yeah, I've got a form in the descriptions if you don't want to ask your comments publicly. And then it'll be in the show notes for the episode. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen to podcast episodes, and make sure you subscribe to this channel. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for listening. I love you all. Good luck. Go get your market and your business done, and come back and tell me how it goes. Okay. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.